I have presented fundus examination, visual pathway, eye movements, and this is that is all at lower level. Now we will go to the higher level. What is higher level means? You see world in Krishna's mouth. All of us cannot see that. That needs higher order processing. Okay. As we know, visual system is a dynamic system which adapts itself to the needs of the subject based on the task he needs to perform with his vision. So vision is not just for seeing. We see things, choose what we want to see, and then carry out actions based on what is seen. So vision is an active process requiring expectations and hypothesis testing. We don't see everything that is available for us to see. We see things which we are going to use, and you test some of the principles that we are believing, and that is the higher level of visual understanding. So at bottom, images projected to the retina are generally complex dynamic patterns of light and colors. What we see as a flower or a person is not really is the one that is represented in the retina. It is only various frequencies of light and colors. And it is not a passive perceptual process, but a very active and complicated activity of looking and seeing involving picked up selected features. All these frequencies are gathered, putting into categories of selected features and synthesized along critical details and selection from a number of alternatives, and recognition is the end of a chain of events. So when we see an object, it is various frequencies of light and colors which falls on the retina. They are categorized. They are made into complex synthesis based on multiple parameters, and the meaning is interpreted based on what is categorized in the various levels of the visual pathway. So at low level, it detects various types of contrast in images, like lines, contours, brightness. That is called Gestalt principle. So at low level, it detects various types of contrast in images. And at middle level, it identifies the visual primitives like contours, field of motion, and a surface. So three-dimensional vision means we should be able to recognize an object when it is kept upside down, or when it lies sideways, or when it is in the usual position. That is by three-dimensional percept, and that is done by the construction of the contours and in which plane it is moving forward, above, sidewards, like that. So that is the middle level. And higher level is integrates information leading to a conscious visual experience. We have seen a flower, and you integrate it with the previous experience of someone who is very close to you, gave that flower, and how the emotions were experienced at that time. All that is brought into the interpretation of the seen object. That is the high level, which involves extra-striate visual structures which integrates emotions and experiences in a top-down on a bottom-up information received from the lower level and the middle level. And vision is useful only if it delivers a message to other parts of the brain. And behavioral goals is the end product that vision should deliver. For example, as I said, if you see a lion or tiger, we will not stand there. We will have to understand the danger behind that particular object, and you should take definite methods to escape. Whereas if it is a beautiful thing which you like, you will get attracted to it and move accordingly. So that is the behavioral goal, is the end product that vision should deliver. And it should tailor to the behavioral needs of the species. And each species has got a different needs, and that need should be tailored. That is how higher visual processing takes place. So as we know, this is the usual visual pathway. Here we know all this we have previously gone through when I did the basic visual systems. So you know that there is a retina, you have got the nasal fibers which cross, the temporal fibers which do not cross, and among the nasal fibers which cross, there is a Willebrand's loop, The upper part of the nasal goes to the opposite optic nerve and the lower goes to the ipsilateral optic tracts, which is called the Willebrand's loop. Then it forms the optic tract and goes into the temporal lobe and the parietal lobe. The fibers which carry the lower outer field goes to the parietal lobe, and the fibers which go to the upper temporal field goes to the temporal lobe and then goes to the occipital cortex and gets established there. So we have got the Broadman area in the occipital cortex, that is 17, 18 and 19. 17 is the primary visual cortex, 18 and 19 are the association cortices. And how it receives information, alerting system, ascending reticular activating system and the thalamo-cortical projections. They alert the object to the seen world. If you are sleepy and not alerted, we don't perceive anything. So ARS alerts the system to observe what is relevant to the organism, and it is extensively connected to the limbic structures, to the frontal lobe, to the parietal lobe, and to the motor cortex, because vision should convert into a motor activity. Like when you see a glass of coffee and you want to take and drink, taking and drinking is a motor activity. So vision is collected to the motor cortex, limbic cortex, emotion. You think how our mothers have made coffee for us, and the emotions of getting a flavored coffee gets into that. And supposing it is, you think that there's a dangerous solution, you should shun it off. That is by attentional system in the frontal lobe. So all these systems are extensively connected to the visual information. So primary visual cortex extends to the total length of the calcarine sulcus from the occipital pole. We saw that, that's the area 17, and it constitutes more than half the human isocortex. The major number of neuron count in that cortex is more than half the human isocortical neurons, and subserves binocular vision and most differentiated lamina structure of all isocortex. The visual cortex is the most differentiated and organized laminar cortex, and stripes of Janari is a myelin dense layer which demarcates area 17 from area 18. We saw the visual primary area 17, 18 and 19 are the association area, and this 17 and 18 are separated by the stripes of Janari. And we know that there are about 6 layers, and the 4th layer in the occipital cortex is tripartite. So this is the histopathology showing the lines of Janari between area 17 and 18. So we will go to the occipital lobe. It is the primary visual area. Area 18 and 19 are association areas, and area 19 coordinates information with temporal and parietal lobe. Temporal lobe for memory, parietal lobe for spatial orientation. And unilateral damage to area 17, field defects to the opposite side with macular sparing. This all of us know. For young boys, we should know macular sparing, occipital cortex, macular splitting, optic tract. And so that is an important point to differentiate between occipital cortex and optic tract. Both of them produce hemianopia. Macular sparing is cortex, splitting is tract. Then congruous is cortex, incongruous is tract, and Wernicke's hemianopic pupillary reaction is cortex, and it is not there in the tract. And bilateral damage, when it happens, you get the thing called cortical blindness, which closely resembles non-organic blindness. So cortical blindness and cerebral blindness, what is the difference? Cerebral blindness is agnosia, visual agnosia, whereas cortical blindness is true blindness. So cortical blindness, the disease is in the occipital cortex, complete occipital cortex damage. That is area 17 and 18. And there is complete blindness. Patient will not have Manas reflex. That is when you put the hand in from the front of the eye, a person who sees will blink the eyes. So that Manas will not be there. But fundus and pupil will be normal. And there will be, when you do the EEG, you will find that the occipital alpha is not seen. And when we put a flashlight, the photic drive will not be picked up in the occipital lobe. Whereas agnosias, visual agnosias in the is not due to the cortical damage, due to damage of the circuits. So this can be double hemianopia. What is double hemianopia? When we tell the patient to identify an object on the right side with the right hand, he will identify. But identify the object on the right side with the left hand, he will not do. Because of the splenium lesion, that is the connecting pathway, they do not have communication between one side and the opposite side. So two fields are floating independently, but across the body commands they cannot recognize. And crossed quadrantal hemianopia, upper lip of the calcarine sulcus lesion will produce right upper quadrantic and left lower quadrantic. So this is a very peculiar type of field defect. And then they may have manas because the superior colliculus is there. So when you put the hand in front, reflexly, they may close their eyes. People fundus is all normal. And so it is an agnosia, and that is a cortical blindness. What is visual agnosia? We'll go a little more into that. Damaged visual association areas produce visual agnosia. That is in the circuits. So they deny blindness because they see something. Because the primary visual area is there, superior colliculus is there. So they will see something, but they do not know that that is not reality. So they see something and believe that is reality, and so they deny blindness. That is called Anton syndrome. They will deny blindness. And when we tell them to read something or do some vision testing, and when they do mistakes, if you point it out, they will give excuse. They will say it is because I lost my glasses, because the light is dull. I am not seeing like that. They will tell me. They will refuse to accept that they are not seeing. And simultagnosia is one thing which we see in this area. Failure to perceive simultaneously all elements of a scene and properly interpret. For example, if you see the celebrations in a temple, they may identify the elephant, they may identify the umbrella, but they will not together say this is a temple festival. Amorphosynthesis, synthesizing the various components and making it a whole. That will not be there. Individual components will be perceived, but together it will not be processed. So, at the lower level, symbol attribute selectivity. Thus, as I told, shape, size, color, texture, depth. So first we should know all these frequencies of light and colors has to be converted into shape, size, color, texture, and depth. And then the direction and speed, that is processed by the 5-1 neurons. And axis in color space, which axis is the orientation, that is also by the V1 neurons. And the receptive field issues, neurons and column based. These neurons go in columns from the retina to the occipital lobe, and through columns the field is in which an object will be recognized is determined by the columns. And there is spatial orderliness in the occipital cortex. That means retinotropic arrangement, point-to-point projection of retinal image to the occipital cortex is there. So one point in the retina has got an exact representation in the occipital cortex. That is called convergence and or retinotropic arrangement. And convergence of different sensory inputs takes place in different planes of the occipital cortex. So there is a spatial orderliness between the retina and the occipital cortex. And primary occipital cortex topographically represents the opposite hemifield. The left cortex will represent the right field and right cortex will represent the left field. Input from both eyes are segregated at layer 4, which is the tripartite layer, and serves the peripheral basis of stereopsis, that is depth perception. In the layer 4 in the occipital cortex is one of the stereoscopic, that is the depth at what meter is the vehicle in front of my car is running. If you judge it as shorter or if you judge it as farther, that will result in serious accidents. And far cells detect depth beyond the plane of fixation, and near cells for those in front. So the cells which detect the far away placed objects, they are called far cells. And the ones which detect the objects which are close to our eyes are called as the near cells. They are named like that. And these cells judge the depth and form a three-dimensional percept. And we have got three types of neurons, the simple neurons, complex neurons, and hypercomplex neurons. Simple neurons pick up the axis and orientation. And complex neurons respond to moving edge of specific orientation or direction. And hypercomplex neurons pick up the angulations. And orientation columns. What are orientation columns? I said that in the retino-occipital representation, there are columns. And these columns are simple cells of same orientation, arranged as pinwheel groups. They are cells which carry out a particular function, like in our workplace. We are organized in groups of people who do similar work. So they are arranged together in the form of a pinwheel group. They are shaped like pinwheel, and that is called the orientation columns. And what is this blob region? They are peg-shaped regions shifting from one column to another. So these are dynamic areas which shift from one column to other. And hypercolumns respond to lines in all directions. So simple cells, uniplanar representation. Blob is shifting from one plane to another, whereas hypercolumn is multiplanar. And what is this extra-striate? That is what I said. When we see there is attention, there is limbic emotions, there is motor action, spatial orientation. So that is the extra-striate visual cortex. Visual cortex doesn't end with the occipital cortex. For higher order perception that involves emotion, experience-based interpretation, action, that comes to the extra-striate visual cortex. So parts of the cortex where analysis of the visual signal is made. You have converted the frequencies of light and colors into various objects based on the columns, blobs, and hypercolumns carried information. But this has to be analyzed into what? So middle temporal lobe is concerned with motion processing. And inferior temporal lobe processes static images and object recognition. And V2 and V3 neurons, segmentation and figure ground recognition. What is figure ground recognition? Means there is a background and there is an image. So the background and the image is differentiated through the V2, V3 areas. And there are approximately 30 extra-striate connections, which I showed in the initial picture, where there's a complex tracks, association fibers and commissural fibers, which connect the occipital area to the various parts, which I showed in a complex picture in the earlier part of this presentation. There are about 30 extra-striate areas. So that is the brief anatomy of complex visual processing. Now we will go to the physiology. So mind responds to perception and not reality. So you have seen something. So, but you go to the extra-striate area and make a meaning out of that, and you respond based on what you interpret out of that. Your rose flower might carry very good emotions to one person, and it might excite very wrong emotions to somebody else. So based on that, the individual reacts. So everybody doesn't react uniformly. It involves attention, memory to get it. So this is a rose flower. To get that identity, you need an attention and memory. Then the emotional environment in which you first saw that rose. And what is your motivation to get out of that rose? You are going to get depressed, or you are going to get happy, or you are going to do some action. You put it to the gods, something like that. That is the goal set. You have done a goal and thoughts and feelings. So all this together gives the final image. If a cat thinks that image belongs to a lion, then the cat will start imagining it is a lion. So it's an extra-striate visual processing that decides the meaning and the behavior that we get out of a seen object. So primary information reaches the striate cortex, that is the V1 area, and then projected to the secondary visual areas, that is V2, where reassembly and mapping of information takes place. And then you have got the area V3, which takes care of moving objects, and area V4 for color and form, and area 5 for movement cells and responsive to direction of movements. And damage to V3 to V5 causes general impairment in recognition, because you are not going to recognize movement, you are not going to recognize color, you are not going to recognize form and direction, then naturally you cannot recognize the object. And damage to V4 results in color processing, because that is unique for color. So only V4 area is damaged in the cortex, you may not recognize the color. And damage to V5 is mainly movement. As I said, V4 is color. So if the movement is, if the V4 is damaged, you may see it as black and white. If area 5 is damaged, you will not recognize movement. These are real life situation, akinetopsia. That means you have got a situation. Imagine a situation where you see an object in front of you. So you have seen that is a child or somebody standing there, and that person is moving to the right or the left. That movement will not be perceived. And then suddenly you see the child in another place. That is akinetopsia. You will think some devil moved the object invisibly to another plane. So you will think this is a psychiatric patient. He says that my child was standing here. Suddenly she disappeared and then she is seen in another place. So that is a failure of movement perception. These are border zone neuropsychiatric syndromes. It can be easily mistaken as psychosis. Because when the object is stationary, it is recognized. When the object is moving, it is not recognized. And again, it becomes stationary, it is recognized. So you do not know how it moved from one plane to the another plane. So you think some devilish plane. The reverse is also there. That is called a redox phenomena, where only movement will be perceived. So when the object goes and stops there, when the child stops, the child has disappeared. When the child is moving, you see. When again the child stops, you don't see. That is called a redox phenomena. So akinetopsia is you do not perceive movement. Redox is you perceive only movement and you do not perceive stationary. So that is V5 area is intact, but V3 is damaged. So these are syndromes. If you do not know, we will all put it as a psychosis. So what is this antagonistic control? The system which controls gain. Gain means which should be taken. Rejection, which should be rejected. And generation of selectivity and integration of secondary cues. So when you see so many flowers, you are interested in picking up the rose. So you should decide which one you are focusing. That should be analyzed properly. And the rest should be rejected. And that is the antagonistic control. Rejecting the unwanted objects in the scene field is done by the antagonistic control system, which is also in the extra-striate circuits. So when we see a presentation, we are not going to see the people who are moving around the objects on the table. That has been done by the antagonistic control, so that you focus on what you want to see. So here you see the primary visual cortex that is the area 17. Then we have got the connection to the parietal lobe, and it has got connection to the thalamus. It has got connection to the outer temporal, inner temporal, and these are the some of the simplified extra-striate connections. And then we have got the dorsal pathway and the ventral pathway. What is dorsal pathway? That is going through the parietal lobe to the occipital lobe. That is the wire pathway. Wire is the object. That is the wire pathway. That is the dorsal pathway, goes to the parietal lobe. Ventral pathway is what pathway? What is that? That is the ventral pathway. So what and where? Color, movement, shape, static, all these, how it is processed, the physiology of it, I have briefly told. Then there is something called constancy. Constancy is what I said, when a bucket is kept straight or tilted or upside down, you should recognize that this is the bucket. For that, there is a phenomenon called constancy. So these are the various aspects of a particular object. So that principle is called constancy. So ability to recognize an object in different views, despite the limitless range of retinal images produced by it in different positions. In different positions, it will produce so many images. Still, you know that this is a bucket, but it is lying sideways. This is a bucket, it is tilted upside down, like that. And unique or invariant properties of the object, like neck of a giraffe, like a bucket. What is the special feature of a bucket? It has got a broader mouth, it has got a narrow base, and it has got a metallic handle. So those features alone are picked up, and in whenever position it is lying, it will be picked up. Like that, if you see a giraffe lying down, sleeping, or standing, the neck of the giraffe no other animal has. So the unique or invariant feature of that object is selected to get a constancy of that image in whatever position it is. So that is picking up the constancy. The unique feature of that object is picked up. So in any view, you know that this is that object. Next principle is category. Assigning to a species category, like apple, banana, these are all fruits. So next principle is categorizing them. So assigning specific category, fruits or variety of alphabets to simplify responses by category specific response neurons. So you have got a category specific response neurons. Those neurons assign the category of the object and experience dependent plasticity, improves discrimination. Previously, you have eaten a banana. How it tasted? That produces a taste-linked plasticity neural circuit that says this is banana and this has got this taste. So that also puts it into that category. Next is implicit. Visual learning improves even by complex skills by repetition. So anything, you can repeat, and you can convert it into a very simple task and reflexively do it, even though it is really complex. By repeated learning, and object recognition becomes very easy. And explicit is learning through working memory circuit system for new characters. So you have got a constancy by picking up the unique features. Category specific neurons assign it to the particular category, and experience dependent plasticity puts one character like the taste of it or the emotion of it or the limbic situation in which that object was seen, and by implicit or repeated learning it becomes permanent, and explicit is for new visual learning. And mental rotation and manipulation takes place at post-central gyrus. For example, if you see a person in front of us, we see the front of that person, we see the side of that person. We do not see the back. So that is the limitation of our lower visual organs, only 2 dimensions. But by mental rotation and manipulation, we have seen the third side of that person and you reconstruct it. That is called mental rotation. When you see a person, you don't say that this is the picture of if you see a live person in front of you, you don't say this is a picture. If it is 2 dimension, we will say only picture. If there is a 3 dimension, you know it is an object. But when the live person is sitting, even though we are not seeing the third dimension of the person, we do a mental rotation and construct the third dimension and say this is an object. And perception takes place through the dorsal tire, that is frontal, parietal to occipital, and association or what through the ventral tire, that is frontal, temporal to occipital. So this lower order perception is end organ dependent. The end organ dependent contour, color, gesture, movement, all these and categorization is dependent on the end organ based information. This is inflexible, jungle along wiring, instinct based for survival, default and not learned. So this lower level of processing, color, shape, categorization and 3-dimensional rotation is uniform for everybody. But what is the meaning you get out of that is unique to each individual. So here you see a object, and we can see the object, you can see the depth of it, And where is it is determined by the parietal visual area. What is the depth in which that cup is placed, and what is the purpose of the cup, what is the purpose of the pen, that happens to the ventral string. And what is this extra-striate? Till recognition is lower order and extra-striate is the higher order. So why higher order? Action for vision. As I said, if you see a snake, you should run away from that. It is not just seeing a snake. So for action for vision is the extra-striate purpose, and eye movements to guide frontal lobe. So when you see a snake, in which direction is the snake moving? Is it coming towards you or away from you? For that, you have to move the eye. So the occipital cortex is connected to the frontal eye field. So you move the eye and trace the plane in which the snake is moving so that you don't jump into that. And visual selection, triaging irrelevant stimuli and space recognition. So snake is coming towards you. On the side, you might see a mango, or you might see some flowers. You should triage all that. You should not be attracted to that at that time and go to the targeted object and then recognize through the temporal lobe. So through eye movement in the frontal eye field and frontal attention, you triage irrelevant stimuli, move the eyes towards the plane of the relevant stimuli and recognize through the temporal lobe and action through the motor cortex. And this is carried through the motor cortex and say run away to the left so that you are away from the snake. Then here you are seeing a cat. So how does the cat generate a image, holistic image in yourself? When you see it is a cute looking animal and it makes that sound mew mew and it produces an emotion. It has been eating in your house for so many months and it shares love with you. And when you touch it, it is furry. So a thing which is having a furry feel, which is cute looking, it produces mew mew sound and it produces tender relationship with you. That becomes the holistic cat. That is the beyond perception. So visual perception is only the look of it. Is it cute or not? That is affective component. Mew mew is auditory component. Affect is limbic component. Furry feel is tactile component. So this is all process once you see a cat. Only the visual processing has happened, but its sound is recognized, the affect is recognized, the feel is recognized, and its look is recognized. That is extra-striate visual processing. Event perception is social perception. And animals understand intentions by perceiving postures. So it is said that a male bird attracting a female or vice versa, they do some postures and that postures are seen and that is converted to the intention of that organism. It is calling you or it is asking you to run away. And next is operant conditioning. Conditioning one type of stimuli with another type of stimuli will produce a associated response. So a posture becomes a call. Posture is something else and a call is something else. But they are conditioned together and through the visual image of that posture, you understand the meaning behind that posture. That is conditioning. And imprinting, identifying mother by instinct-based clues. Even objects to which exposed first may be considered as a mother. So if a child is exposed to a bottle of milk first, the child might imagine that is the mother. So that is visual meaning addition. So constantly show a bottle, bottle becomes the mother. Then at 9 minutes of birth, baby can track a face. That is why soon after delivery, we tell that the baby should be given to the mother. And at 2 days, fix at face, which has dynamic expressions. So the mother will be showing so many expressions, love and all those things. And those expressions are recognized within 2 days. The acuity at that time is about 30 centimeters, which is equal to the distance between the breast of the mother and the face of the mother. So where is this milk coming? So you know that this is my mother. And imitating needs, appreciating different expressions. So is my mother smiling? We definitely know if your children in our house, if you show anger, the child start crying. Even a very small child will recognize. So they recognize the emotions expressed through various movement which is perceived through the visual pathway. And so that is called faceness knowledge. This comes within 3 weeks. Faceness knowledge comes within 3 weeks. Is my mother appreciating? Is she angry? Is she sad? No? Speech and facial features identified after 3 months. And categorizing faces with dynamic cues happen by 6 months. At this point, the child will categorize. This is my mother, this is my father, this is my grandmother, and this is somebody else. So that is the time when stranger anxiety will start. Child has categorized, these are my loved ones, these are my safe people. And then cries when others are coming. That is what we call stranger anxiety. And the perceptual set, that do you have a set inside? Based into that, you put your information. This means perception is based on what is expected or predisposition to an experience. That is, you have a set. For example, if you see a child, you got a condition called Capgras delusion. What is Capgras delusion? You see your son, but refuse to accept he is your son because you think that the perceptual set of your son is not represented by the son who is standing in front of you. It is said that in the polymodal association circuit, your son has got a nose, eyes, ears, face, hands, and legs. And also, he creates an emotional feeling in you. Oh, my son has come. My loved one has come. So when that component is de-linked by a data linking circuit disorder, these are circuit based, then you see the eyes of your son, the nose of your son, the ears of your son, the limbs of your son, but the affect is not there. So you say you are an imposter. You are looking like my son, but you are an imposter. That we call it as a Capgras delusion. These are organic diseases. So why is my mother refusing to accept me as her son? Has she gone mad? No, she has not gone mad. There are breaking down of the extra-striate visual association circuits. So that is based on a perceptual set. You have got a premorbid set for certain objects. When that polymodal association circuit, one link is broken also, you refuse to accept that. That results in real life disorders like Capgras delusions. And what is the top-down? Top-down is based on a combination of what occurs in the external world. That is the color, contour, movement, shape, size, with existing thoughts, experience, and expectations. Perceiver builds the construct for the cognitive understanding of a stimuli. So you see the eyes, nose, ears, limbs, and you have got a perceptual set. You build them together and make the construct. And what is bottom up? Based on feature analysis only. So bottom up means this is tall, this is white, this is a glass, these are eyes. That is all. Nothing more to that. Bottom up is just not based recognition of a seen object. Top down is based on your own inner set. Both together forms the holistic appreciation of the object. So now let us see why we cannot see God. I said our vision is restricted by 2 dimensions, and third dimension is construction by the constancy principle. So it is said that if though Lord thinkest it possible for me to see thou, then O Lord of the yogi, show me the imperishable form. Because Krishna will tell you are not fighting for yourself, you are fighting for dharma. So you have to do it. It is your responsibility. Then he wants to say the world will curse me, saying that I fought my brothers for property. So I just want to understand you are God. Show me your form. That is what he is asking. Then he says, thou art not able to behold me with thine own eyes. So Krishna will tell, you cannot see me with your mortal eyes. Therefore, you are very particular to see that this command is coming from the universe. I will give you divine eyes. Behold my Lord. And so he will say that with the divine eyes you can see me. That is the higher order perception, seeing world in Krishna's mouth and seeing the divine form of God. It is all not possible because of the limitations of our lower perceptual set. That is bottom-up processing. Top-down processing needs 30 extra-striate connection and beyond brain connections. Those things are not there in the usual motor. But there are people who have trained their system to perceive the 30 extra-striate connection. Most of us do. The mothers hug and cry when they see the sun. That is because of the extra-striate connection only. But they cannot see the mind of the sun. They cannot see the achievements of the sun. So that comes beyond brain. So that is what Krishna will tell. I am giving you the special eyes. Now you can see me. So you can see that universe is supposed to have about 64 dimensions. And 2 dimensions is what we can see. This is 1 dimension, this 2 dimension. 3rd and 4th dimension we construct. And the multiple dimensions we cannot see. That is why we are not able to see the universal consciousness, which is all pervading but imperceptible. So these are the various dimensions which have been sorted out. So if those dimensions, if you train your instrument, we can see the God. So Krishna to Arjuna, see now the whole universe with all things that move and move not. See all as one in me, but thou can never see me with these mortal eyes. I will give you these divine sights. Behold my wonder and glory. So limits of human vision. Human visual apparatus has not more than 3-dimensional perception. Only 2-dimension is complete, 3rd dimension is completion. 4th dimension is time. The rishis can move back in time. That is the 4th dimension. And Vedas says that universe has got 64 dimensions. And we are limited by our perceptual capacity. God exists everywhere in dimensions not visible to the naked eye. Current physics has already sorted out about 24 dimensions, and still so many dimensions remain to be sorted out. So what are mirror neurons? The evidence for direct sensory motor mapping. That is, vision is sensation, motor is action. So evidence for sensory motor mapping mechanisms come to be known through the discovery of mirror neurons. This could be an action perception system. An action is happening and that action is perceived. That is the mirror neuron. Seen information is directly mapped in the motor representations of the same actions of the observer. You see somebody is beaten and you feel that beating. Even though you see the beating, you feel that also. You become emotional. We cry, why is that goat killed? Why is that people killing and eating fishes? Why are they killing and eating other animals? Doing such cruel activity, we feel it. That you have seen it and you feel the terrible tragedy. That is action perception, perceiving the cruelty of converting the flesh of other living things, putting them into suffering and converting them into our own meat. That is one of the Panja Mahapabas. No? So that is the action perception. Cruel actions are perceived. But this is recognized as on non-self due to availability of self-information. But why are we not immediately reacting? You know, my hand is here. My eyes are here. My leg is here. So what is beaten is the leg or hand of my neighbor, or leg or hand of a goat, or leg of hand of a cow. So I will keep quiet this time. That is cocoon of self-information. So you lock in yourself into self-information, so you lose your empathy. So, but if the limb of the person is fully deafferented, like war wounds, long-term war wounds, patient has lost one limb. People have done experiments. So when another person or another living thing is beaten on the non-existing limb of that person who has lost that limb, then the person beaten on the non-existing limb of the individual, he feels it on himself. So it is self-information that you lock yourself into cocoon of your selfishness. Then you lose your empathy. But that right hand is not there. So in your body schema, there is space in your right hand. So that is not locked up in the cocoon of body schema. So right hand is universal for you when it is not existing. So somebody is beaten on the right hand, you feel more empathy, more sympathy, more pain, because that part is not locked in the selfish cocoon of your body schema. So now we'll come to face recognition. So current process model for face recognition is, you have got a visual modality which goes to the facial or gyrus or the face recognizing unit. Then you have got the auditory modality of that face and goes to the person specific semantic knowledge. Auditory modality, this is a person who can sing. So it goes to the person specific semantic knowledge of the auditory component of that individual. That is put into the facial or gyrus. Then the gait, the way that person with that particular face, how does he walk and what is his name? And it goes into unconscious percept of the whole face. So when you see a face, a mother who has sung lullaby for you, the mother who walked in a particular way, and this is her name, that goes into an unconscious percept of the polymodal association of that face. So now we'll go to, so this is the physiology of face and person and object recognition. We'll go to dysfunction. So apperceptive dysfunction, you have got apperceptive and associative. What is apperceptive? You do not recognize anything. You do not know the color, you do not know the contour, you do not know the shape, you do not know the movement. So you don't recognize an object because you're not perceiving anything about that object. What is associative? You perceive. You perceive the color, contour, movement, shape, but you cannot convert it into a whole. So such a person, you show an apple, he will not tell it as an apple because he is not putting the color, the shape and the stem of that fruit into that fruit. But he can copy that. He will say, I am seeing this, but I don't know what it is. Whereas a perceptive person will say, I do not know what it is, and he cannot copy that object also. So two kinds of perceptual defects. One is apperceptive, another is associative. Apperceptive person is not perceiving anything. Associative person is perceiving but not associating. So criteria for diagnosis of agnosia, failure to recognize an object. That is a mandatory criterion. Normal perception of the object. He should be seeing the object but not recognizing. And elementary sensory disorder excluded. So we should prove that he has normal eyeball, normal cornea, normal lens, normal optic nerve. So the elementary sensory pathways are all right. And he is perceiving the object, but he is not recognizing. So an ability to name the object once recognized should be there. So it is not due to anomia. So you put the apple in his hand. Then he says, this is apple. Then you know he has not forgotten the name. So it should not be due to anomia. And there should be no dementia. So the criteria to call agnosia is failure to recognize an object, normal perception of the object, elementary sense organs should be normal, ability to name should be normal, and there should be no dementia. And but in this situation, when a person says, I am not seeing, how are you going to show that he has a normal visual apparatus? That is the toughest topic. That is the toughest task. So end organ function cannot be measured by usual means. You cannot check it by looking at the visual reading charts, because he will say, I'm not seeing. But recognized indirectly by features like blind side. That is, something is moving in front. He will reflexively push it out. That means he is seeing. And or blind touch. You are touching. He will say, nobody touched me. But he will just remove your hand. That's a understanding that he has perceived the touch, but he has not recognized the touch. He has seen the object, but he has not recognized that object. Because he has seen, he is reflexively chucking it out. And aversion and attraction. Some color is moving, some light is moving, suddenly turn. And motion on or lack of motion may be appreciated. Some movement may be appreciated or lack of motion. So you have to wait to see, is the patient showing some signs of normal end organ, and may be able to mention about orientation. He may be able to mention something I am seeing. He may be able to recognize familiar numbers. He may be able to recognize moving objects, and he can fix for fundus examination. For fundus examination, he should shoot the ophthalmoscope, he should perceive, he should see the light of that and all he will be able to do. But he will say, I am not recognizing. And with an optokinetic tape, you can determine his acuity. Only if vision is there, optokinetic tape will generate a nystagmus. So you can do a very small object, optokinetic tape, and find out the nystagmus. So at the smallest size of the object at which the nystagmus is elicited is the acuity of vision of that person. So when there is agnosia, there is chaos. A banana is in your hand. So you are thinking, is it orange or is it apple? And you are in thorough confusion. Something is there. You do not know what it is. And what is this alexia? Alexia, I should fix on the word. For reading, alexia is reading problem. For reading, I should fix on the word. A word is written, I should fix on that. Then the letter should be perceived. And there should be a scanning. You see, there may be so many letters above, below, but there is a visual scanning to put together the meaningful letters and central language to understand the meaning of that word. So you have written apple. So apple is this one. To understand, you have to carry it to the language area and associate with the color, shape, taste, and form the holistic information. This can also be again top-down and bottom-up processing. For reading, you need all this. You have to fix on the word, you should perceive the word, I should scan and put the correlating letters together, carry it to the language area, find out the meaning of it, associate it with the various other aspects and form the holistic information of the object. And when this is failing, you can have peer alexia, you can have alexia with agraphia, you can have third alexia, you can have surface alexia, you can have deep alexia, and you can have neglect alexia. What is peer alexia? You can differentiate size, shape, and depth, or different size, shape, depth orientation. You can give and see whether the patient is appreciating that. And you can give letter identification, you can give word identification, geometric figure identification, and matching of different shapes and sizes, and tracing letters. Put the hand on that and trace it, trace pictures, and identify people, body parts, and colors. All these tests you can give. And sensory, after this test, peer alexia is unable to read, but he can write. Whereas alexia with agraphia is angular gyrus. Peer alexia is occipital association area. Alexia with agraphia is angular gyrus. He can neither read nor write. Frontal alexia is attentional alexia, or it is called third alexia, where the patient can read the whole word, but he cannot spell read. That is frontal alexia or third alexia. And you got surface alexia and deep alexia. Surface alexia is irregularly spelled words, cannot be read. But new words, he can form a phonemic association. Morpheme phoneme association is broken. That is surface alexia. Deep alexia is object with a meaning different is. For example, if you say, show a tube light, instead of saying tube light, patient will say current. So something related to that they will interpret. But the real object name they will not tell. That is called deep alexia. So sensory visual aphasia. What is sensory visual associate? Spell words with whisper. They cannot read loud. They spell words in a whispering way. They do not read loud. And they read simple words like cats or dogs. But they can spell words which are not read. You tell them to read an apple, they don't read. But close their eyes and spell apple, they will be able to do that. And ability to choose objects which are not read. Patient is not reading the apple. Patient is not spell reading the apple. But from the mind, he is telling the apple letters and he can choose the apple. This is called sensory visual aphasia. What you find that when you tell them to spell read, they make whisper. They do not read loud. But they can spell from their mind. They cannot read what is written, but they can spell from their mind and they can choose the object also. Somehow they cannot read the word that is written, but read the letter from the mind and recognize the object also. That is called, these are real organic situation. We will say here written apple. Why is he whispering? Then tell, okay, sir, forget about that. You tell the spelling of apple. Then you will say APPLE. But APPLE is written, that is whispering. From the mind, he is telling APPLE. Pick up the apple, he will nicely pick up. You are confused. What happened? He can tell it from the mind, he can identify the apple. But when I tell him to read the spelling written, he is whispering and confused. That is sensory visual aphasia, organic conditions from the association areas. And what is this word blindness? Although this condition usually discussed in the context of language impairment, it is an agnostic symptom. It is restricted to specific type of visual stimuli. Most subjects with this condition do not exhibit impairment in language, but words alone they do not read. They can read color, they can read animals, they can read forms, but they cannot read words. This is called pure word blindness or word agnosia. Then mirror images. So mirror agnosia. What is mirror agnosia? When an object is in the mirror and you recognize that is the image and you know the object is in front of the mirror. But mirror agnosia patient thinks that the object is inside the mirror. So they will break into the mirror to get the apple. That is mirror agnosia. Spatial localization of the image seen goes wrong. Instead of knowing very well that the object is in front of the mirror, they will break into the mirror. These are also true things. And face of self, that is called mirror image agnosia. Your own image is there in the mirror, but you think that it is somebody else. So you talk to your own image. So imagine a person talking to his own image or her own image in the mirror. You will think that person is mad. But they will think that reflected image is a cousin or nephew. We have had a patient who was a professor in the Benares Hindu University, and he used to visit home occasionally only. One day the wife saw that the husband was talking to the mirror in the almirah of their room. So she went to see what is happening. She didn't know that he is talking to the mirror. So she opened the almirah. Then the mirror moved away. So actually that professor was talking to his nephew, imagining his own image as his nephew. When the image disappeared, he thought that his wife murdered the nephew. So these are the real life application, and he actually gave a police complaint that his wife murdered the nephew. And then he was evaluated as the nephew was very much alive. Why did he make this complaint? A respected professor. And then, he suffered from mirror image agnosia. So these are the implications. These are real life situations. And reflected faces can be misidentified of other people. Self is mistaken. We have seen people from army. One lady, army officer, was always imagining the reflected her image as belonging to a Pakistani. So she will always break open the mirrors in their house. Then the son put a curtain on all the mirrors and didn't know what was happened. As very much possible, she was taken to psychiatrist. And after psychiatric treatment, she did not improve. Then she was brought to us and we recognized it as mirror image agnosia. And reflected images of others, that is mirrored image, any image may be misunderstood. That is called mirrored image misidentification. But most of these people have unique different. They may recognize the ornaments. They may recognize emotions, or they may not recognize ornaments. They may not recognize crying. They may not recognize smiling. So somebody will tell, when I am smiling, he is happy with me. When I am crying, he is not recognizing. He is not showing any sympathy to me. And you get angry with the person who is suffering from the emotional face recognition. That is because of some crying face recognizing circuit failure. That if you do not tell the family members, they will think, when I cry, he doesn't help. And when I smile, he is always happy. So these are all higher order perceptual disorders. So he is looking for the apple inside the mirror. So what is the difference between mirror agnosia and mirror image agnosia? So they identify the mirror, identify the objects in the mirror, and identify faces in the mirror, and only think the spatial localization of the object is inside the mirror. Whereas mirror image agnosia, They argue, talk, fight with a self-reflected image, but they do not go and look for the image inside the mirror. Now we'll come to the face. We saw the face recognition circuits, the physiology of that, and face recognition has an important role in social interaction. And prosopagnosia or face recognition failure can occur without any other agnosias. So again, you think that he did not recognize me, he is recognizing apple, he is recognizing flowers. We should know that organically only prosopagnosia can exist. And ventral occipitotemporal cortex associated with face perception. It is coded in the hippocampus and right from prefrontal cortex for recognition and retrieval. And fusiform gyrus has got important role in feature analysis of the face. And some prosopagnotic patients are unimpaired in recognizing facial emotions. So they may not recognize the person in front as their father, but their cry and laughter they may recognize. They'll say, why are you crying? Why are you laughing? But they will not say, you are my father. So that kind of discriminatory recognition and failure of recognition does happen. And dorsal stream is movement perception and moving objects appear jumping. So if the movement perception fails, so then object was here, then the object is here. The movement is not perceived. So you think that the object jumped from here to there. So movement is perceived as jumping when there is a movement perception failure. As the movement as such is not perceived, that is what is akinetopsia. As I told you, you may think it jumped or some devil moved it. And astereopsis is depth perception. And mirror agnosia is localization. And you have got the Balint syndrome, where there is oculomotor apraxia. You are unable to, I said, when you see an object, the eye movement comes to play and moves your eye towards that object. So the eye doesn't move. Oculomotor apraxia, the eye does not move towards the object. It does not recognize the object. And there is overshooting or undershooting of the target. So you see the snake elsewhere when the snake is in front of you and jump into that and get bitten and die. So that is Balint syndrome. And you can, as I said, that area 4 is for color. And you have got different areas, 5, 1, 5, 2, 5, 3, 5, 4. So the color area is got, you don't recognize color, achromatopsia. Your object recognition area is gone, you don't recognize the object. Facial or gyrus is gone, you don't recognize face. And topographic recognition, dorsal pathway is gone, you do not know the topography. And visual association area is gone, you cannot read. That is alexia. And blind sight and undawned syndromes. So what is blind sight? It is the sight of the blind. What is undawned syndrome? It is denial of blindness. So somebody is really blind, but when an object moves in front, he quickly avoids that object. So you think that this person is malingering. He is really seeing, but he avoided the danger. That is called collicular vision. That is a novel target recognition. We have got so many targets: anticipated target, unanticipated target, moving target, stationary target, colored target, black and white target, and novel target. Novel target is coming from the space. So like that, something like that. Novel unanticipated target recognition is happening in the superior colliculus. So superior colliculus recognizes something is coming, but it is not gone into conscious interpretation. But reflex action takes place. So patient will put the hand and chuck off the object. But he will say, I did not do it. I did not see anything. That is blind sight. That is otherwise called collicular vision. Superior colliculus has got novel target recognition capacity. It recognizes but does not consciously appreciate. And what is alesthesia? Transfer of images from one half of the field to another. As I said, there is a column that recognizes the spatial localization. So an object which is on the right side will be perceived little more right or little more left. That is spatial dislocation of the seen object. That is alesthesia. What is palinopsia? When you have an object, you have seen a pen and then you have removed the pen and you are putting a flower. So once a pen is shown and the image of the pen should be inhibited, removed, and you should perceive the flower. If that image of the pen is not removed, after the pen is taken away, When you keep the flower also, patient sees the pen only. That is called palinopsia. That is failure to inhibit the image of the object that has been removed to accommodate the new object. That is not happening. So every time you show a different object, patient will keep on telling the first object only. Akinetopsia, as I said, failure to recognize movement. Redox is recognizing movement, not recognizing lack of movement. And now we'll come to split brain recognition. So split brain is corpus callosum is cut. What happens? So left hemisphere is the literal hemisphere. Right hemisphere is the emotional hemisphere. So left hemisphere confabulates answers when the right hemisphere is not connected to the left hemisphere. So right hemisphere perceives objects in the left field, but it is not connected to the left hemisphere. So the language expression of the left hemisphere is not linked to the recognition of the right hemisphere. So the left hemisphere will find its own answers and confabulate things which are really not there in the left field, whereas the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere is not connected. So in a split brain situation, objects seen by the right hemisphere are not transported to the left hemisphere for the visual or the verbal interpretation. So the left brain will confabulate. And when the word spoon is projected in the center of the screen, and if asked if he sees anything, he will say no. But when the left hand can search the object seen and pick it up. So it has seen it, it has interpreted it, but it has not converted into the language which has to be processed through the left hemisphere. So it will confabulate an answer and say, I did not see what is written there, but it has seen. That is how the left hemisphere tells lies. The right hemisphere has seen. It has not transferred it to the left hemisphere. So left hemisphere will simply say, I am not seeing anything. But it has seen is shown by it picking up. But left hemisphere tells a lie saying that nothing has been seen. That is split brain. So we'll see how we are going to test. So at the first step, visual acuity, visual field should be preserved. Apperceptive agnosias do poorly on matching and copying. Associative can copy, they can match, but they cannot name. As I said, it is apperception is not perceiving. Association is perceiving, but not associating. You have got various agnosias, body agnosia. So you do not recognize body parts. Spatial agnosia, that is topographic disorientation. Temporal agnosia, time regression. Object agnosia, object recognition. Symbolic agnosia, and alexia. Body parts, you have got finger identification, that is Just-Man syndrome, parieto-occipital region. So they may not recognize the various body parts. And you can tell the body parts in space, geometric features, topography, length, breadth, localization. You have to check all those things and then get the data. Temporal, time interval between, also between the previous class and this class, what was the time gap? That judgment fails. That is time agnosia. Object agnosia, mind blind for objects recognized by vision. You see some object, but you are not able to recognize. That is object agnosia. Symbolic, that is language symbolizing objects, that is forgotten. Numbers are forgotten. Music is not recognized. And written musical notes are appreciated, but music is not recognized. Alexia, words, letters, and pictures are not read. That various things I have briefly mentioned in the session through physiology. Apperceptive, you don't perceive anything. So you cannot copy, you cannot match, you cannot recognize. But from the memory, so you are not able to perceive an apple shown. But you tell them to draw from the memory, they can do, because that's a different thing. In the memory, the apple is there. But through the visual mode, the apple is not there. That is apperceptive. So size, shape, depth, orientation, geometric figure matching, and picture matching. That is the test that you give. You tell them to name, you tell them to identify letters, you tell them to identify words, famous faces, familiar faces, body parts, colors. You give them to recognize. This is some example for size, which is small, which is big, You can give this and tell them to identify. This is shape recognition model. This is line orientation recognition model. And then if these are there, I told you about V1, V2, V3, V4, V5, each one recognizing one thing, and they are like a peg wheel. They are linked through the peg areas, and they are by hypercomplex neurons going to multidirectional recognition. So depending on which is failing, we know which part of the visual pathway is abnormal. And perceptual categorization defect helps to appreciate the equivalence of an object's three-dimensional shape across different views and under different lighting conditions. So how are you going to test? This is all the bucket. As I said, the unique feature is categorized like the neck of a giraffe or the handle of the bucket. And this is Ponceau illusion. So it is only a two-dimensional picture, but this gives a three-dimensional percept. That is again an illusion. By narrowing down the two lines, a two-dimension gives a three-dimensional percept. That is called an illusion. That's a Ponceau illusion. As you know, it's only two-dimension. But as you narrow, we think that there is a third dimension. That's an illusion, visual illusion. Then you got the line orientation by trial B from number letter without crisscrossing. You can see the line orientation. And a perceptive person cannot copy a key. They cannot match two keys. They cannot recognize a key. But associative person cannot recognize, but he can copy, he can match. Then this is a test. You can tell they recognize the shape and put it correctly in. These are devised model. A person with apperceptive visual agnosia cannot correctly fit this into that. How much time he takes? How does he correctly put it? That says he perceived the gap there and perceived the dimension of this and put it into that. And so like this, an apperceptive visual agnosia patient, he cannot copy. He can draw from the memory. He cannot copy an apple, but he can draw from the memory. He cannot copy a book, he can draw from the memory. Associative can copy, but cannot recognize. He can copy, but he cannot recognize. Color, visual agnosia for color. Color object arranging, that is Jesman syndrome. And color naming. Then impaired color visualization. They can name, they can select, but they cannot recognize a color which is in front of them. And they may feel color asthenopia. A bright red might appear like a faded red. So these are the fading of the colors. You give this, and instead of feeling like this, you will feel like this. And this is complex figure of ray. This is for visual memory and visuospatial skill. So this patient has to see this and first copy, then keep it in your mind and recall how much are omitted. That will say how much was his visual perception and retention. And delayed recall of the same image after 30 minutes. They should not use ruler or eraser. They have to do freehand drawing. First copy, then at 3 minutes, then at 30 minutes. That helps you complex test to know how many lines he has fixed in his mind. And you have got a combination kit. That is, this kit is a neuropsychiatric tool from the NIMHANS battery, where you can check apperceptive, associative, naming, color, shape, contour, all these comprehension, and they are scored, and they have normative data for this. So these are some more examples of failure to copy but draw from the memory. Then associative. Associative is observed in the left hemispheric lesion, and errors appear to be semantically based. And identify the shape hidden in dots. And from among similarly colored objects, point to the color which is different. Size, shape discrimination, which is big, which is small, which is triangle. Object perception, identify the fragmented object. And spatial test, count the dots, how many cubes in the figure. That kind of test. And name the letter hidden among the numbers. You can see the letter hidden among the numbers. So that is a test for apperceptive. And figure ground discrimination, daughter figures given in a picture of pot and water. So they can. Then this is Colin's figure test, completion from outline models. And so this is again a basic battery, standardized battery. This you can carry in your hand. And the first three is for copy. You tell them to copy, name and write. This column you tell them to recognize. F is to write the name. And the next is to read loud. And next read and write. Calculate, show the use, read and follow. So this is a comprehensive checklist battery which is having a normative data. Then ventral and dorsal simultagnosia. Dorsal or attentional. So once attention is captured, identifies, otherwise has piecemeal vision. That means he will see the trees, but he will not see the forest. He will see the elephant, he will not see the temple festival. That is dorsal or attentional. Ventral is multiple stimuli is attended. So he will say this is a temple festival. But you will not tell the piecemeal. Why did you say temple festival? Because the elephant is there, because the umbrella is there, because the Lord is there. That you will not tell. That is ventral simultagnosia. Ventral is collective perception is there, piecemeal perception is not there. Dorsal is piecemeal perception is there, collective perception is not there. So this is the Puram festival in the Shiva temple in Cochin, where we give they'll say elephant, the umbrella, the temple. But is it a Puram Ulsavam? They will not be able to tell. Trishur Puram. So this is a patient with simultagnosia who is not having the simultaneous vision. He is copying like this. He is having a ventral simultagnosia. He has picked it and put very half-assort pictures. Balint syndrome, I said, is a spatial perceptual defect. So he has got a simultagnosia. He has got an optic ataxia, visually reach the object in the wrong place. And oculomotor apraxia, unable to move the eye towards the target. This is seen in bilateral superior parieto-occipital pathology. And face recognition failure can be unique for famous face, familiar face, novel face, crying face, laughing face, and reflected face. I have briefly discussed some of these faces in the previous. This is a testing. So you should give each one differently. You should give examples for famous face. You should give smiling face. You should give crying face. You should give novel face. Each one may be different. One may be recognized, one may not be recognized. So each are in different circuits. That awareness will reduce the caregiver burden. Because they will say, my patient is recognizing the surgeon who operated him yesterday, but he's not recognizing me. That's a familiar face. So familiar face circuit may be broken. So he will recognize a novel face. So that is very important to reduce caregiver burden. Then you have got other screening tools. That is, other screening tools, the simple tools which you use at the bedside, and you have got other tools, visual awareness, research group, test time taken in milliseconds. They are timed test to fixate on two targets in computer presented to fixation in central vision and a 10-degree rotation. So two objects, 10-degree rotation, how much time? They are very complex tests for visual scanning. And trial B, that is from letter to number connection. You can find out the time taken and how many circuitous routes are taken. They are categorized and compiled based on educational status and how much should be the time taken. Then so these are the testing methods. And this is Madhukar Sinha, who is that professor in the Banaras University, who was talking to his own image as his nephew and complained to the police that his wife killed the nephew. And this was his MRI. He was suffering from early Alzheimer's disease. And this is Basavappa. He was reading the lines in a paper, leaving one line below or above because of the optic ataxia. He could not fix on the targeted line. He will read the line below or above. He sees the child, but he cannot locate the child exactly. So if he wants to lift up the child, he will put his hands very far and bring it together and lift up. That is, and he also had prosopagnosia, and he had dressing affection. He was a teacher. So he could read small letters, but not the lines above or below. That means his acuity is all right, but he had an optic ataxia. He could not recognize which object in front and which behind. He could not copy. He had defective orientation to lines. His calculation was defective. He identified colors wrongly, and he has got a colpocephaly with a temporo-occipital atrophy. And he has also a temporal horn dilatation. And a 52-year-old lady, delirious since 5 days, found to be hyponatremic and corrected. On recovery from delirium, she had cortical blindness. And this is what we saw here, cingulum, cortical area showing ribbonning. And you have got the thalamus showing the hyperintense signals. And that is this is a hypertensive teacher. Suddenly one day she started, that is visual alloesthesia. She saw the students in another plane. So instead of looking at the students straight and talking, she was talking in another direction. Why is she looking at the door and talking? Because she was seeing the students there only. That is alloesthesia, which I told. Illusory displacement of the seen world happens in real life. So she was looking at the students towards the door. Their students were relocated to the door by the visual association area. Now you see she recognized the pen. You tell her to pick up the pen, she is searching for it here. That is what happened in the classroom. So take home message is brain. So I have told the lower visual pathway. I have told fundus examination. I have covered 3 sessions on eye movement. Now I have gone to the higher order visual perception. That is brief completion of visual processing. So the take home message is brain is an enormously intricate organ and processes information in complex and subtle ways. Extra-striate areas play an important role in higher order visual processing, and several phenomena closely mimic psychiatric conditions. It is probable that no logic and reason will help us to understand and differentiate truth and untruth. So that is the completion of the brief outline into visual processing, which has started with lower visual perception, then fundus examination, eye movements, and now the higher order visual processing.